Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you all for being here, for taking time out of your busy schedules to dedicate some time to marine conservation and education. My name is Todd Bohannon. I'm a volunteer educator with REEF, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself before we get going. I've been teaching for 20 years in the Seattle area, kindergarten all the way up through high school. A while ago, about 12 years ago, I was teaching kindergarten in Seattle, and it turned out that I was teaching the daughter of two marine scientists who help run REEF. And at that time, I was taking groups of middle school kids to the Amazon in the summers for an immersion program focusing on conservation and ecotourism. And Chrissy and Bryce, the two scientists from REEF I'm referring to, their daughter was in my kindergarten class, and they found out about some of the work I was doing and asked me if I would be interested in helping put together a curriculum for the Grouper Moon project, a component that would be happening in tandem with the actual project itself. And of course, if someone asks you, do you want to work on a project in the Cayman Islands every year, you say yes. And I did, thankfully. And it's since that time, it's become one of the highlights of my year. Every year working with students in the Cayman Islands, all of the Cayman Islands and the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos and Florida and all around that we've worked with, but primarily there in the Cayman Islands. It's one of the highlights of my teaching career. I can't say enough about what a wonderful experience this has been, and how important it is that you are here today, because without you, this project would not be the success that it is. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about REEF, and then we're going to talk about how this project got started. So let me try sharing my PowerPoint. All right, look at that. So Grouper Moon project, here we go. So what is REEF? Well, REEF stands for the REEF Environmental Education Foundation. It's a marine conservation nonprofit located in Key Largo, Florida. And we have a number of projects that REEF works on every year. Probably the biggest project is the Volunteer Fish Survey Project, which REEF educates folks like you and me how to identify fish, specifically reef fish, and train you to go underwater snorkeling or diving and survey the fish that you see. And then those surveys get uploaded into a database, and it's the only database of its kind in the world, pulling together. We now have over 250,000 fish surveys. Another big project that REEF is working on is invasive species programs, and of course the Grouper Moon project. REEF also has a number of ocean explorers education programs that I'll share with you guys later if you want to check them out. Okay, next. So the Grouper Moon project itself is actually a collaboration, and it's a collaboration between the REEF Environmental Education Foundation and the Cayman Islands Department of the Environment. And I'm going to bring on a friend of mine here who his name's Bradley Johnson. Hi, Bradley. Thank you for being here. So Bradley works with the Department of the Environment and has been working on this project since the beginning. And he was probably one of the first people I met on this project. And he's here to talk a little bit about DOE, how this project started, and the collaboration between the DOE and REEF. Bradley.
Great. Thanks for having me, Todd. The history of sort of Nassau groupers in the Cayman Islands goes back, decades really, because they used to be fished annually as they were in most Caribbean countries. Our fishermen started noticing each year that the numbers that they were catching were getting smaller and smaller, and the fish were getting fewer and fewer. So they actually approached the department to ask us to look into what was going on, what was happening. So we began monitoring the catch coming from those sites way back in 1986. And we've documented sort of the demise of those sites, so to speak, and put forward recommendations, which unfortunately didn't get implemented at the time. So we, fast forward 15, almost 20 years, to the point where there are no more groupers being caught because the numbers are now so low. We have the situation where in Little Cayman in 2001, we had a sort of a rediscovery of a very fruitful site off of the west end of Little Cayman. And it just so happens at the time that a team from REEF were on Little Cayman doing fish surveys and happened to see what was happening and what was going on, and then approached us to sort of work with us to start understanding the site better. Because at that point we were monitoring catch at that point, but weren't actually getting any, in the water and getting data from it. So that's when the Grouper Moon partnership began, in terms of getting in the water and getting a lot of data from it, and researching the sites to a much larger degree. So a lot of the previous work that was done with the Nassau Grouper was to do with aging and trying to understand the biology and ecology of it. And DOE did the earliest and only age validation of Nassau Grouper. Had happened before back in the early 90s to confirm the otolith rings and things like that. So the partnership, it began in 2001, and during that we were able to get a series of legislation events in place to stop fishing while we tried to understand more about the site. And year after year we were able to get more information. We were able to get more funding to really expand and ask the right questions to try and get at more management strategies. So the partnership was a tremendous opportunity for both of us both organizations to really work together to accomplish something fantastic.
Yeah, it's such an incredible story. And this conservation project, the Grouper Moon Project, has become one of the most successful marine conservation projects in the world, I believe, right now, which is just, it's amazing. And as I've been putting together this presentation and the slides and thinking about how this is a collaboration between DOE and REEF, I really feel like there's a third, just as important, maybe more important collaborator, and that's the community. This wouldn't be successful without input, without buy-in, without support from the community. So do you think, and that's, I believe that's why we started the educational component. So I was just wondering if you could, in your own perspective, share, the impact that you think that the educational curriculum that we've done has on students, and the conservation efforts of the grouper overall.
I mean, we've always tried to get into the schools to share, any aspect of a conservation message and try to enlighten the young people. We've been doing that for years. So it was really great to have to develop the education component of it, because it really gave a bit more of a structured approach to the teachers in terms of how they were able to take the information and then apply it easily into their own curriculum. We've worked really closely with a lot of the groups in the community. One of the key areas that we've had that we really need to point out is the support that the fishermen and the fishing community have given for the closures and different aspects of legislation to really support the work we're doing, even though it meant them not being able to get any of the fish, but they still benefit in the long run, and they are now seeing a lot of the fruits from the sacrifices that they made. So it's really something that isn't seen initially. You really have to have patience to wait for the fruits to bear and to see the results. And I know with the schools and the different students that have passed through, I see a lot of the students that were in the first few classes, one of which is actually working at DOE for us now. So it's a great tool to really enlighten those students, really give them a good foundation of practical applications of conservation, and also see the results of what so many people talk about trying to accomplish.
Yeah, working with all of the schools has been really powerful. And we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. Bradley, thank you so much for sharing about DOE, about this project. The next thing that I want to do is I'm going to share a short public service announcement. So I'm going to say goodbye to Bradley. Bradley, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
Thank you for being here. And I hope to see you in February. Okay, so around 2000, maybe 3 or 4, DOE and REEF created a public service announcement called The Grouper's Last Stand. And it's just a short video that gives a synopsis of how the aggregation was found and what happened and how the protections began. So remember that this video was filmed a while ago, so the information has changed since then. There were far fewer fish then than there are now. But this is a video that I would consider showing my students. I've shown it to all of my students at the beginning of starting this project, because it gets to the point real quick about why we're here and the stakes that are at hand. So 1 second, I'm going to share that video with you, and I'm going to mute myself.
I was a commercial fisherman in Louisiana for 26 years. I know what happened to the redfish and the trout and all like that. I've seen it wiped out in 5 years by commercial fishermen. Those groupers could be wiped out in 2 years.
Nassau Grouper spawn once or twice every winter, and while they're normally solitary and territorial, they will get together from many, many miles around into a small location. And so you'll get thousands and thousands of individuals at a half kilometer by half kilometer, a very small reef area, and there they will spawn. And after they're all said and done with their spawning, they'll go back home to their home reefs and spread out over miles and miles of reef area. When Nassau Grouper aggregate to reproduce, lots of individuals from a large area get together in a very small area. When you get that many individuals in a small area, it's very easy to fish them. It's like fish in a barrel, literally. And so when these aggregations happen, if you allow fishing, just a few vessels even, you can remove most of those fish in a few seasons.
2,000 were taken in 2001, and then another almost 2,000 were taken from the spawning aggregation in 2002. After they sold as much as they could here, and they went to Grand Cayman. They sold all they could down there. The market was glutted, and a lot of fish just went to waste and spoiled.
There's lots of evidence to suggest that when you fish it to the point that it is no longer worth fishing, the population ultimately doesn't recover afterwards, even if you put a lot of protections in place to try and affect that recovery.
Every grouper now is critical because the numbers are so small.
It's sort of this concept that should stick very well in the Cayman Islands, if you want to use a banking analogy, is that you spend your interest, not your principal, right? And that spawning aggregation is our principal. And well protected, it'll produce interest forever. And we can continue to fish other areas around the island within limits if the aggregation site itself is protected.
Nassau Grouper are a critically important component of Caribbean coral reefs, not just because they're important in a fisheries context, people like to eat them, but also because they are an apex predator on coral reefs, which means they exert a lot of top-down control, a very structuring force on how Caribbean coral reefs are structured and how ecosystems work in the Caribbean. And because of that, they are really a driver of healthy coral reefs. The more of them you have, ultimately, the more healthy your coral reefs will be. There's really good evidence to suggest that when those fish spawn out there, the baby grouper that they're producing ultimately end back up on the Cayman reefs. And that's important because what it means is the extent to which you protect those spawning sites during this critical period of time when they're reproducing, you will increase the number of new baby grouper that show up on these coral reefs. And ultimately, in the Cayman Islands, you'll have more fish to catch into the future and more fish for divers to see.
So we must protect what we have. Otherwise, you can say goodbye Nassau Grouper.
Okay, awesome. So that video I think is appropriate to show from the curriculum that we have is specifically designed for elementary, middle school, and high school kids, starting at around year 4. That said, we have teachers that have done it with younger kids as well. So have I. But I've shown that video to students year 4 all the way up through high school. And it's a good introduction to, what we're doing, why we're doing it. And I think it effectively shows, the stakes, what the stakes are. And I think it's a good hook for the kids at the beginning of starting this, because all the educational components that I'm about to tell you about were created to develop you and your students' background knowledge about the Nassau Grouper and about a coral reef ecosystem. The purpose of that is so that your students will be able to engage with us in live stream webcasts that we'll be holding in February from Little Cayman at the aggregation site, with all the scientists there out counting the fish every day, using all sorts of really amazing scientific tools. And your students will join us for those live streams from your classroom and get to see and talk to the scientists and see, what's going on at the aggregation site. They're really, it's the culmination of all this. And I think it's really fun. Your students are going to love it. So let's talk about how we're going to get them ready. Okay. Let me add my PowerPoint. So this is all about a spawning aggregation. And the spawning aggregation that we're talking about is on Little Cayman. And as the documentary and Bradley explained when it was found, that it was fished almost to exhaustion. And the reason that happens is because Nassau go to the same spot every year to spawn, to aggregate. Every year they go to the same place. And so once those places are found, it's really easy at that time for those fish to be taken out. And because of that, we've had all of the aggregations throughout the Caribbean and Atlantic essentially die out. And this spawning aggregation we have on Little Cayman is the last viable aggregation that we know of. It's really, as the video says, last stand. And so kids need to understand this idea of what a spawning aggregation is. And it's essentially that. It happens in the winter full moon. The fish, Nassau Grouper, are typically solitary fish that hang out by themselves all year. They have a spot on the reef that they're territorial, they protect, and they just stay there and they don't hang out with anyone else at all. They don't like other Nassau being in their area. If they do, they'll push them out. They're loners out there. But on the full moon in winter, which usually happens in January or February, they'll all get together at this one spot on Little Cayman. And that's the same spot that they've been aggregating and spawning at since before we know. They've been doing it forever, you know. And so that's why that one spot is so important. And that's understanding that when we see these videos, you're going to see tons of fish, just like in this picture here, all together. And kids need to understand that, like, that's not their typical behavior at all. Because when we see them in live streams, we're going to see them acting in ways that's not the way that they behave on a coral reef. If they were to go snorkeling or diving and see a grouper, they're going to see it in a shallow reef. They're gonna see them by themselves. But during this one time a year, they party. They just get together and they have this huge. I mean, it's one of the most incredible, magical. There's words can't really describe how amazing this natural phenomena is that you have in the Caymans. So getting kids to understand that is critical. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the background of this project. And a little bit as review. So in 2011, REEF began working on the creation and implementation of a curriculum designed for elementary and high school students. This exciting new project, it's not new anymore. This is actually our 5th series of educator workshops that we've done, which is really exciting. So this project focuses on bringing the Nassau Grouper into Cayman elementary, middle, and high school classrooms through lesson plans and live feed videos that will connect classrooms with the scientists who are actually working in the field. Given the importance of the grouper as an apex predator, it's imperative that we raise awareness about these aggregations and help build support for the value of the Nassau Grouper beyond a fishery resource. And here you can see in the PowerPoint this beautiful photo by Paul Heumann of the aggregation. And then we have a picture of some students. The very first year that this project started, in 2011, we piloted with Cayman Prep. And this is one of the year 4 classes that we started with. And Cayman Prep was integral into us starting this project, and we'll forever be thankful to them. Okay, let's keep going. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so a little bit about it. When I created this project, I couched it in developmentally appropriate educational theory, right? And so one of those theories is experiential learning. All of these activities have this thought in mind, and that's the theory that students learn best by doing. And so we try to build in hands-on activities as much as possible for students. So that's one. The second is that it's a constructivist approach to learning, which is the theory that students learn best when they're actively engaged in their learning, creating their own learning. So not just me spewing things out to them and them regurgitating it, but them actually engaging with the material and creating their own learning. And that's why we use, games and hands-on activities and the live streams where kids actually get to engage with the scientists. We have been with over 25 schools since the project began. This is just the beginning of that list of schools that we've worked with. But I almost every school on the 3 islands has participated at this point in the project, and I thank all of them so much for your important work. And again, we would not be successful without your participation and your ongoing support. And thank you all so much. Okay. Oh, we already did that one. Okay. So the curriculum's designed to engage students in a variety of learning modalities. So just different ways of learning, right? One of those ways is by drawing. And so some of the activities that I've encouraged kids to do is to draw scientific illustrations of the Nassau, or create murals in their class representing the Nassau and the different species in the Caribbean coral reef. So here you see some pictures of kids at Cayman Prep High School working with Cynthia Shaw, an author of the book Grouper Moon, to create really awesome scientific illustrations. And I have some great models that I'll show you at the end of this presentation that'll be available to you, student work samples that you can see to kind of help guide that. Games. Games are also a fun, hands-on way for younger students to learn about the life cycle of the Nassau Grouper. And we have an activity called, well, we'll get to it, but there's an activity where they play a board game, teaches them about the life cycle of grouper. It's really awesome, definitely for year 4 students or elementary students. I think that literature connections are a great way to engage students in learning. And so we have a text that we recommend. It's called Grouper Moon. It was written by Cynthia Shaw. And it's appropriate for elementary and middle school students. I've read it to students as a whole class read aloud. I've also had students read it in small reading groups, depending on the availability of the books. And I've sent out books to almost all of the schools, but if you're unable to get a hold of copies of these books, please let me know. And you'll know how to get a hold of me at the end. I'll share all of that contact information. Okay. The book itself, Grouper Moon, it's not just about the Nassau Grouper. It's a fictional book written by Cynthia Shaw, who I believe she grew up in Trinidad. But it's about a young boy living in the Caribbean who is a free diver and meets a Nassau Grouper. And the book isn't just about the Nassau, but it's also about the coral reef ecosystem, and goes into a lot of detail about the corals, how the corals survive, the importance of the corals and the different animals, the different marine life. It really is a whole picture accounting of the Nassau, and talks a lot about the historical significance of the Nassau Grouper and how traditionally they were fished around Christmas time and salted, and and this book goes into a lot of that history. And I've shared it with lots of kids. I think it's wonderful. I also have a literature unit that goes along with this book. If anyone is interested in doing a deeper dive into Grouper Moon and wants to do a literature unit with it, which has all sorts of worksheets and comprehension questions and vocabulary, I can share that with you, and I'll show you where all those resources are. Okay, so now let's talk about the actual. We're going to get into where the lessons are, and I'm going to take you there right now. Hold on one moment, and I'm going to share. Let's get rid of this. So real briefly, historical cultural significance of the Nassau Grouper, that's our focus. But the things that we're really going to cover are coral reef ecology, what a food web is, trophic levels, identifying tropical fish, what a keystone species is, what field science tools and techniques are, and what marine conservation concepts are. And you can see here at the bottom, there's a link to finding that information. And I'm going to take us there right now. So let me undo that, and I'm going to share. Okay. Okay, so I have a blog created that's called, here we go. That's called the Grouper Education Program, and it's a blog that I update while we're there. So you can see here, these are postings from last year when we were there. Every day I'll post on this blog while we're there for the project in the winter, everything that's going on behind the scenes, pictures of scientists collecting data, the different tools that scientists use. And each of these blog posts are available to you to share with your students, and you can engage and write comments. You can comment on anything, and scientists and myself will respond to you in the same day. And this is while we're actually doing the live stream. This is a great place to check in every day and see what's going on. You can go over it with your kids and share the blog posts, generate some questions that you could save those questions for when we're actually live streaming, or you can post the questions on the blog and I can answer them. But in the menu of my blog, of the blog page here, and I'll send you the links for the stuff, you don't need to write any of it down. You can find, this is also a great resource to share with families. If you want to share with families what we're doing, you can share the blog with them. It talks about the program itself, the Grouper Moon Project. It has a link to a documentary that I'm going to recommend that you show to kids. It also has this link to the lesson plans. So you click there and it takes us to REEF's website. And these are where a bunch of our lesson plans and resources are posted. And so each one of these down here represents a different activity that I've created for you to use with your students. And one of the most important things that we use, I'm going to pull it up here. These are marine organism cards. They're like, one side has the the picture of for here example here, this is microalgae. So it has the picture of the microalgae on one side. And then on the back side, it has facts about that microalgae, who eats it, what it eats, its behavior in the reef, etc. Now, I use these food web cards for all sorts of things with my kids. I've given them to kids, and each kid researches whatever that organism is, and then creates a page in a field guide, like a class field guide, or creates something for a classroom mural based on their marine organism card. But they go through from the bottom of the food web, microalgae, phytoplankton, and move their way up through. I have 30 something different animals. So we're moving up the food web, and includes, turtles. Someone will be lucky enough to get the Nassau Grouper. That's always a highlight for someone. Reef sharks. But using these food web cards is a great way to introduce kids not just to the Nassau, but to everything that lives in the coral reef. And it's part of, so this is available to you as a PDF, as this document. You can turn it into a slideshow if you want to show it as a slideshow to your students, or you can print it out and share each page with your students, like give each student a page. And I use these with this really great activity that I have, which I'm going to go back to. Let's see here. Here we go. So I'm not going to go over all of these activities because we just don't have time. We're going to go over, so those were the food web organism cards were the ones I just showed you. And I would use that with this great activity, activity 3, which is, oh wait, no, that's not the one I want to do. Here we do. We want to do food webs. My apologies. Okay, so food webs. This is an activity that you can do year 4 all the way up through high school, and I strongly recommend it. And if we were in person, I would have us all do it together. But the idea behind this activity is that students are going to learn about different marine organisms, including the Nassau, and then they're going to learn concepts about what a food web is, okay? And the interconnections between all of the plants and animals that live in the coral reef and that make a healthy, balanced coral reef ecosystem. And so all of the lesson plans give you tons of background information and step-by-step directions on how to engage your students with it. But just a quick overview of how this activity goes is, I'm going to come back to you guys. Is that you pass out a card to each student, or if you don't have the ability to print them out, pass them out, you can simply, I've shared these on the smartboard with students and had them write down the names of their animals, and then they do a little research on it. You can print them out black and white. They don't need to be color, but they're available for you to use in any way that you want. And please feel free with any of these activities. You can contact me personally, and I'll show you how to do that. with any questions that you have, if you need help by adapting something to your classroom or whatever, I'm here for you as a resource always. And so I'll show you how to do that. But so each kid gets one of the cards, and the kids will stand in a circle around the room. So everyone's got a food web card. And then I've got a bolt of yarn. Like I usually get like a bolt of blue yarn because ocean, but whatever, you can use anything you want. And I'll give the student, I usually start at the bottom of the food web. So I'll ask who's got microalgae, and I'll give them the end of the string of the bolt of yarn. And then in the other hand, they've got the rest of the yarn. And I'll say, okay, kids, raise your hand if you eat microalgae. And there'll be a couple people that raise their hand. And so whoever has microalgae, they have to throw it to one of the other people that's raising their hands that eats the microalgae. And then that person will then say who they are, what eats them, what they eat. And then they're going to ask who eats me. And slowly, as you do this, the yarn is going to create this food web, showing the interconnectedness of every living organism in the coral reef. This is a powerful activity. Once everyone is connected, then what we do is we talk about, well, what happens if you take a species out of the food web? What happens? And I ask kids, what do you think happens? What do you think the impact of that is? And kids will make predictions. And then I say, okay, well, let's try. Let's say, what would happen if we took out microalgae? And this is just an example. You could take out anything. And so what will happen is I'll say, okay, whoever is microalgae, I want you to give your string a good tug. And if you feel the tug of that string on you, you have to raise your hand, because that means that the elimination of that marine life would affect you, right? And so all, marine microalgae pulls, and a couple of people raise their hand. And I'll say, okay, what about butterfly fish? What if we took out butterfly fish? And that person would give a tug, and the folks that felt that would raise their hand. And what we find is, as we move up the food web towards the Nassau, that more and more people are raising their hand, because more and more people are affected by those animals. And so you see this it's a physical way for kids, like in their bodies, to see not just the interconnectedness, but also how many of them are impacted by each other. And this is maybe one of the most important concepts that we're trying to instill in students through this project. And it's one that I hope that you'll do with your kids. Again, the lesson plan has tons of background information, step-by-step, how to do it. And with all of those lessons, as I said before, I'm here as a resource for you. So you just contact me with any questions, comments, concerns, whatever it is that you have. So let's say that you're like, okay, I'm a teacher, and I see that you have 15 or 20 activities on here. I can't possibly do all of these activities, right? I don't have time for that. I just need a couple of quick things to do to prepare my kids. That's totally fine too. So I'm going to give you just sort of a little example of a scope and sequence that I might use. And of course, this is going to look different for everyone, depending on their grade and how much time you have to dedicate to it. I would begin by sharing that PSA, the Grouper's Last Stand. That's my first thing that I would do. After that, I would have the kids do some research on the Nassau Grouper and maybe some of the other marine life that live in the coral reef. So I would probably go straight to this food web activity and sharing the marine life, marine organism cards. Now, depending on your time, you could take that and expand that into a field guide activity, which I have lesson plans for how to do. You could take those cards and you could create a mural in your classroom that shows all of the different animals and marine life and their interconnectedness in your classroom. And I can show you pictures of schools that have done that as well. But after you've done that, I would then share a documentary that we have. And the documentary is from about 10 years ago. And it's called Changing Seas. I recommend all teachers watch this themselves before sharing it with the classroom, just so that you understand everything that's in it. I've shared it with kids year 4 all the way up through high school. And I'm going to show you so there's a link to go to it on my blog, but I'm going to take you to the video right now and just show you the first couple of minutes so you can see, and you don't need to pay for it. You'll just click on the link and you can show this video for free from your classroom. You can watch it at home. You can share the documentary with families if you want to. They can share it from home, or they can watch and see. But this documentary really is a group of filmmakers came and documented the project one year. And it gives kids a really great behind the scenes view of what we're doing. So this would also be a critical part that I would share with students. So hold on one second and I'll pull up that documentary. Okay, so it's called Changing Seas. Here we go. And we're just gonna play the first couple of minutes to give you an idea. Oh, hold on. I should mute myself. Okay, I'm muting.
Are an icon of the Caribbean.
You see them in artwork, they're on postcards, they're on the covers of dive magazines. They're representative of the Caribbean.
For most of the year, Nassau Grouper are solitary creatures, each inhabiting its own territory on the reef. But during the winter full moons, the fish gather to spawn.
Nassau Grouper form absolutely massive spawning aggregations, historically in the tens to perhaps hundreds of thousands.
It's just really a natural phenomenon.
An age-old ritual. Their annual dance occurs at dusk. These days, spawning Nassau Grouper have become a rare sight.
Primarily because of fishing at spawning aggregations, the numbers of Nassau Grouper throughout the Caribbean have declined dramatically.
There's so few left that an aggregation of a couple thousand fish is about as large as it gets.
Any spawning aggregation should be protected because that's the only time of the year that fish actually reproduce.
Okay, so that's just like the first couple of minutes gives you a brief overview, but it really goes into detail behind the scenes on the aggregation site while we're, I think it was 2011 that we did that, or maybe 2012. And it shows all the behind the scenes stuff and explains a lot about the spawning aggregation itself and why it happens, when it happens, and where it happens, how important, the currents and the water temperature and the time of year and all that kind of stuff. All of that's described in that documentary in a really understandable way. So I would share that with your kids. Now, I was forgetting to pay attention to my notes. And there was one other thing that I wanted to share with you. And so this documentary, and there's a really brief film that explains food webs that I would share with your students before you start the food web activity. And it's created by Jessica Harvey of the Guy Harvey Foundation. And I'm going to share that with you now because I think it's great information for you. But then also I think that this is a short video that you would perhaps use to begin your food web activity. Really helpful for understanding food webs. So I'm going to take you there right now. And the link for all of this is going to be on our resources page. And at the end of this, you're going to email me and I will send you notes that have all the links and where to get all of this information. Okay. So don't worry if you don't have to write all this stuff down. Okay. So we're going to watch food web video. Hold on one second. I'm going to mute.
At the surface, the ocean seems simple, but dive in and you'll find a complex ecosystem that needs to stay in perfect balance. A food web is how living organisms interact and depend on each other to survive. A food chain is the order in which living organisms are consumed. For instance, the big fish eats the little fish. For the next few minutes, we're going to look at how everything is connected through a coral reef trophic pyramid. Here's how it works. At the bottom, you'll find the primary producers, in this case, seagrass, which uses the sun's energy to produce food through photosynthesis. These primary producers are the foundation of the food web and the beginning of our pyramid. They can produce their own food from the sun. Above this level are the primary consumers, microscopic animals such as corals and zooplankton that feed on all the primary producers. You could also find herbivores at this level. Herbivores are animals that eat only plants. For our example, we show parrotfish. Parrotfish are critical to a reef because they only eat algae. Next, we move to the secondary consumers, mostly carnivores, feeding on primary consumers or the herbivores. A carnivore eats other animals. Above the secondary consumer level, we have the tertiary consumers, medium reef predators such as groupers and barracuda feeding on smaller fish. At the top of the food web are the apex predators. In this example, sharks hunt and consume the medium reef predators. Sharks also keep the ecosystem clean by eating other sick, dying, or injured animals on the coral reef. You could also find marine mammals at this level. Notice how the levels get smaller as you move up the pyramid. When animals feed, energy is passed up the food chain, but most of this energy is lost through each animal's metabolic process. As little as 10% of the energy gets passed to the next level. As we move up, the number of individuals also get fewer. There's another part of this pyramid that's very important. When organisms die, their bodies feed the decomposers. Decomposers exist on every trophic level and are mainly bacteria. These organisms help to break down waste and keep the cycle of life going. The health of each layer is critical for the system to stay balanced. If we lose a layer through the removal or addition of a species, everything could collapse. This is why scientists work to understand all of the creatures in the ocean. Ultimately, we all rely on a healthy system of life as well, and our future depends on it working. I'm Jessica Harvey for the Guy Harvey Ocean Foundation.
Okay, I want to, that's such a great video. I want to thank Jessica Harvey and the Guy Harvey Foundation for letting us use that video. So again, when you're introducing food webs and the food web activity and the marine organism cards, that video would be great to show at the beginning, giving kids some background knowledge about what the food web is. Okay. So on your own, after this, I suggest that you go on to my blog or onto the REEF website and look at the different activities. The activities that I've already talked about, plus other activities that there's a really great high school activity where students create a conservation, like a sustainable fish guide for the Cayman Islands, where they'll figure out, okay, what types of fish are okay to eat and how are they caught. It's called Do You Know the Fish That You Eat? And the idea for that activity came from the Monterey Bay Aquarium in California created these little Do You Know the Fish You Eat guides that you open up, and it has all the different types of fish, and then it tells, are they sustainably caught or are they not sustainably caught? And it's for the community to get a better understanding of, okay, so as a consumer, I can support sustainability by, purchasing and eating fish that are caught sustainably. And in that project, the high school students will go and interview and survey people in the community. It's a really fun project. It's a longer project to do, but if anyone's interested in doing that, check it out, talk to me, and I'll help you. Okay, so all of these activities, let's go back to our PowerPoint here. All these activities are intended to prepare your students for participating in these 3 live stream events that will happen in February. And the dates and everything are going to be at the end of this slideshow. And again, I will make this slideshow available to you. But I want to show you a couple of clips of what the live streams look like. There'll be 3 live streams, and usually the first 2 live streams will be on dry land, and it will be interviews with scientists and talking about what they've seen and sharing videos and talking about the project, and kids get to talk to all those people. And then the final live stream takes place underwater, and we'll take the kids on a dive on Bloody Bay Wall. And so the videos that I'm going to show you today are from that underwater, one of the underwater live streams that we've done. I think this one was from 2019. So I'm going to just show you a couple of clips. We're going to go beginning, middle, and end. I've got three short clips I'm going to show you just to give you an idea of what it will be like. And you'll also notice that some of them are kind of glitchy, and that's just part of the deal, especially when we're broadcasting from a boat. That sometimes those things happen, and to expect it when it comes. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a couple of clips of what the actual live streams look like, so you know what you're getting your kids ready for. Okay, I'm going to mute. Okay, so I'm going to change the camera so that it's not that camera yet. So here's what's going to happen, everybody. Hello and welcome to the first underwater live stream that we've done for Grouper Moon this year. I'm Todd, and next to me is Dr. Bryce Simmons, and we are going to take you on an underwater dive on Bloody Bay Wall, which is a famous dive site here on Little Cayman. Dr. Christy Pattengill Simmons will be leading us on the dive, and Dr. Bryce Simmons will be talking you through it up here topside. And if your teachers if you have questions, just let your teacher know. And oh, I see you. I see Cayman Prep. Hey guys. Wait. Okay, I'm gonna mute your guys' mic for right now. All right, perfect. Okay, we're all on. So what we're gonna do is Dr. Christy Pattengill Simmons is gonna get in the water, and we have an underwater camera that's gonna go with her. And we're gonna Okay, so as you can see on that screen, at the bottom, there were a bunch of smaller screens, which each one of those screens is the different classrooms that's participating. So when you join, your guys' cameras will show up on there as well. And that's just important to know. And we'll talk about some of the norms that we'll use on our second workshop about how to use the video streaming platform. But so, okay, beginning, I introduced myself, some of the people that are there. We're going to go underwater now and look and see what's there. Hold on.
when they spawn, that's the only time during the year when they reproduce. So it's good that they make as many eggs as possible and release them at that point in time, because that's it. That's the big show. And after that, they don't reproduce again until the following year. Okay, so I'm looking at Christy now as looks like she's slowly coming up the reef, and I see, oh, there's a really cool set of coral heads there. And there's a sea fan on top of that. That's that kind of thing that looks like a big flappy leaf. That's a sea fan, and that's a kind of soft coral. And I also see some larger, oh, guess what, you guys? Look what they found. You guys see that? That's our friend, the Nassau Grouper. Looks like at least one of those fish that was out there spawning has decided it was time to come home. And we found a Nassau Grouper. And see how it's sitting really still and it's got its mouth open? Okay, and in front of it, you see that little yellow fish that's moving around. Why would it be that that little yellow fish is able to move around that big predator and not get disturbed at all? Well, the reason why is because that's a juvenile hogfish. It acts as a cleaning fish, just like the cleaning goby we talked about before. Those juvenile hogfish set up shop. They advertise as a car wash for larger fish. The larger fish like that, this big Nassau Grouper pulls up, opens its mouth, opens its gills, and that fish right now is inside the grouper's mouth.
So that's some of the cool stuff that they'll get to see underwater. And then I wanted to show you how some of the questioning happens live. So I'm going to show you just a brief clip of students engaging with scientists, asking questions from the field. Hold on one more second. We're going to go down and we're going to take and I want to introduce you to Dr. Christy Patton-Gill-Simmons, who was down there diving. And I'm going to give you guys a chance to ask her some questions. And I see Spot Bay. I see some kids standing up there close to the camera, which I'm assuming means you have a question. I'm going to click on you in a second, but first I'm going to hand the microphone over to Dr. Patton-Gill-Simmons so that she can answer your question. You can talk right to the scientist herself. So hold on one second. Thank you. Remind them to unmute their mic.
Okay, you guys have your mic on? Hi guys, hope you liked that.
What caused you to study about the Nassau Grouper and passion and population?
Yeah, so I got interested in marine biology and the oceans when I was about your age, and have always had wanted to study marine biology. So when I went to college, I started working on fish. So originally I was just kind of interested in all different kinds of coral reef fishes. But then as I became aware of the Nassau Grouper in the Cayman Islands, I was here once on a trip, and we started working on a project with the Department of Environment to better understand these Nassau Grouper here, and I've been doing it ever since. It's a really interesting project, and I'm really proud and excited to be able to share them with you.
Okay, so that kind of gives you a flavor of what it's like. Now, that live stream was taking place on a boat, and so kind of choppy. The other two live streams that will precede it will be on dry land and aren't usually like that. The connection is better on dry land, but that gives you an idea of what, you know, your kids will literally be able to ask questions, go underwater with the scientists, see everything. And then the scientists will also share on the last day, they'll share video of the actual spawning event itself, which takes place at dusk. We can't go there live because everyone's at home at that time, not in school, but we will share that. And it's just incredible. I'm not sharing it now because gotta wait and join us to see it because it's so awesome. But in any case, that's what the live streams look like. Now let's go back to our PowerPoint, and I just want to, as we already talked about the blog, which is something that a resource that you're going to want to use. But I also want to shout out to Spot Bay on the BRAC. Spot Bay has been, and you can see Spot Bay's down here on the bottom. I'm here with a bunch of kids at Spot Bay, and then Cayman Prep up here at the top. But Spot Bay on the BRAC has been just such an enthusiastic, wonderful partner on this project, and you guys were highlighted in that video, and I just want to thank you guys for being so supportive and all engaged in this project, and really everyone that's participated. Okay, so I said that I have some work samples. I'm going to just quickly walk you through some of them. I'm also on our website. I'm going to create a database that has all of these for you that you can look at and share with your students, because sharing models of work with your students is a really great teacher technique and can show kids, what the expectations are and what they can strive for. Okay, so here, year 5, Spot Bay, they were studying the Nassau. They did scientific illustrations. So you can see here at the top. And then they created a mural with all those scientific illustrations. And then each one of them included a fact about the Nassau. And they hung that in their school, I think outside of the library. It was a really awesome project. Great idea. Year 4, Cayman Prep, they created this mural in their classroom using paper mache, based on a bunch of the different marine life that lives in the Caribbean coral reef. The murals, I think, are a fabulous idea, especially doing them in your classroom keeps kids engaged and prompted on, oh yeah, that's coming, that's what we're doing, and keeps it in the forefront of their mind so that when the live streams come, they're ready with their questions. One of the activities that we haven't gone over yet, but that I encourage people to do is creating posters. And there's an activity in my lesson plans. It's called Wanted Poster, or Wanted Nassau Grouper. And kids create a scientific illustration of the Nassau and then a bunch of facts about them and why they're endangered, why they're a critically endangered species, and then posted those up around their school. To educate not just themselves, but the rest of the school about what's going on with the Nassau. Great idea. And I have tons of examples of these. Here's an example of scientific illustration. Scientific illustrations I've done with kids, all grades, from kindergarten all the way up through high school. And if you are feeling like, I want to do that with my kids, but I'm not sure exactly how to start, email me and I can work you through it. It's really, really simple, fun activity for kids and teaches them all about the structure of the fish. They'll learn a lot, and it's creative, hands-on, and I love them. So here's a few examples. Here's another one. I love this one. This is a grandpa Nassau Grouper. Yeah, and he's got everything identified on here on the grouper. And this was a 5th grade student that created that. Here's a few more. Another thing that I like to do is have kids, if you have the time and you want to, is I have them write papers, informational papers about the different species in the coral reef. And I use those marine life cards as the jumping off point for those. So I'll give each student one. You get what you get. You don't throw a fit, and you get your card. And then I have them do a little research that includes illustrations and talk about what this fish does or what this marine life role is in the ecosystem of the coral reef. And so it's a research writing paper, and then I have my students present them in front of the class. And then we put them all together into a big book that has all this information about the Caribbean coral reef. If that's something that you're interested in doing, I'm happy to help you set that up. I have rubrics that you can use for creating those writing assignments. You can write them as persuasive essays, but you can also just write them as informational essays as well. And I have tons of materials for anyone that's interested in doing something like that, elementary, middle school, and high school. So contact me if that's something that you'd like to do. And here's more example of some papers that my fifth graders did. Also, something that I've done in the past, and I haven't pushed it out to all teachers, but I'm going to start doing it this year, is I create questions based on each day's live stream and send those I usually just send them to my students, but I'm now going to create those and send them out to all the teachers, so that if you want to, it's sort of a reflection or an assessment of the students' understanding of the live stream, and it asks them some specific questions about what they saw and for them to explain. And I think that these are great to do after you've done the live stream. You could do it after each live stream, or you could just choose one of them that you want to have the kids answer these questions. And I ask if you do these, and I hope that you do, that you save them, and you save any documentation of student work that you do, because I try to collect as much of that as I can to share. More grouper Moonstream focus questions. Okay. REEF also offers a series of virtual field trips, and you can access all the virtual, meaning online, that focus on different elements of marine conservation. And you can add to what you're doing with your students. If you want to do even more than just the grouper moon stuff, you can go on and check out the virtual field trips and do a whole number of other things if you want to do a deeper dive. And if you want support for doing those, we have myself and also other educators with REEF that can help walk you through how to use these with your students. So the next steps. We're about done for today, but I want to tell you what's going to happen next. So I hope that gave you kind of a big picture view of what the educational component is and gives you some ideas. And I'm going to, when we're done here, you're going to email me. That's the first thing you're going to do. Number one, you're going to email me your contact information, okay? As well as any questions that you have about what we covered today. It's just easy email, Todd@reef.org. So you just email me, and by emailing me, I get your contact information. I'll put you onto my mailing list, and I'll answer all of your questions, and I'll take those questions that you've sent me, and I'll answer them in the next live stream. Because what's coming up next month, we'll create a second video. It'll be shorter than this one, probably about half the length. That just shows you how to use the live streaming platform, which is called Yardstream. And I'll create a little video for you to watch. And then after we push that out, a couple of weeks before the live streams start, I'm going to have some drop-in sessions online, like maybe a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday after school for about an hour. I'll hang out on the Yardstream app, and everyone's invited to just come in and join and test run the app itself, figure out how the muting works, how to get on, so that you're feeling comfortable with the platform before we actually do the live streams in February. Okay, so oh wait, maybe we're missing one more thing that I wanted you to have do on here. So one is email me. The second thing that I'm going to ask you to do, and maybe I'll just send it to you in the email when you email it to me, but I'm going to have you watch the Changing Seas documentary, and I'm going to give you a couple of questions about that. I know I totally spaced it. But so watch the Changing Seas documentary. I think that it's really important for you to watch. Gives you a whole bunch more information that I wasn't able to cover today, and really gives you a well-rounded understanding of what we're doing. Strongly recommend watching that. And I'll send that to you. As soon as you send me your email, I'll send you all the links to all the videos and the resources that I've gone over today. Then be on the watch, a couple weeks after, I'm going to push out another video on how to use Yardstream. Please watch that. And then come into one of our drop-in sessions so that you can practice using Yardstream and practice it in your classroom so that you can troubleshoot anything that might happen. So those are the next 3 steps that I'd like you to do. Now, as an incentive, we are going to be providing gift cards to the first 15 educators that are interested in doing this. And those gift cards are for educators that decide that, yes, I'm going to do the project, and I'm going to answer, because I'm going to have some survey questions after each of these workshops that we're doing that I'd like you to fill out, because one of my goals this year is to add to the professional development, maybe things that I'm missing or things that you feel like need to be in there. And part of the way I gather that information is through surveys, and you share that information. I can adapt my workshop to be more effective, to fit the needs of all teachers better. And that's really one of my big focuses this year, is revamping a lot of what we're doing, updating what we're doing, and trying to get as much teacher input as I can. That teacher input is really critical for me to make a project or a program that's successful and that meets your needs. So for those teachers that are interested in doing the surveys after each of these workshops, the first 15 will get a $20 CI gift card. We're planning on it being from a grocery store on the Cayman Islands. I'm still working that out, but you will be getting a 20 CI gift card for turning in your surveys after each of these workshops. And they'll just be brief, few questions, fill it out, email it back to me. And the first 15 that do that, we will also send you a gift card. And that, oh yes, this is just for Cayman teachers. The gift cards are just for Cayman teachers. Sorry, teachers elsewhere, we just can't work that out. But yeah, the gift card is specifically for Cayman teachers. Okay. Now here you can see, hold on, let me get rid of this so I can see better. Here you can see what's coming up next, or what the dates for the live streams are going to be. The full moon is in February, and we're going to have 3 live stream dates. It'll be February 6th, which is a Tuesday at 10 o'clock, February 7th, which is a Wednesday at 8 o'clock, and February 8th, which is a Thursday at 8 o'clock. That one on the 8th will be the underwater live stream. Now, sometimes things go wrong on that underwater live stream. The camera might break, or the conditions might be too bad, or any host of a million things can go wrong. And so if we do have technical difficulties that prohibit us from being able to do our complete live stream on Thursday, we will have Friday as a backup day. So if things go awry, and again, I'll be communicating with you on email, all of this stuff, but if anything like that happens, just have your Friday penciled in as a backup day in case something doesn't work out. Okay, so that's February 6th, 7th, and 8th. Those will all be in the morning at 10 o'clock. The times may shift just a little bit, because once I get teachers' input, I might change the times to work a bit better for all teachers. So sometimes it's maybe at 10:30. So that could shift just a little bit based on your input. Yeah. So that's the PowerPoint. That's the presentation. Thank you everyone so much for being here. Now, please write your questions down. Any questions that you have, anything that wasn't clear, write them down and send me an email right now to Todd, TODD, @reef.org. Send me your information so I can get you on my mailing list, and just know that I'm here as a resource to help you with all of this. If you feel like, oh, this is too much information, I need a little more explanation, I need some hand holding through some of these activities, I'm here for you to do that. So don't hesitate to email me at any time. And again, thank you all so much for being here, and watch out, send me the email, and then keep posted for the next workshop on how to use StreamYard, which will come up next month. Okay, have a great day, everyone, and I'll talk to you soon. Go Grouper Moon.